On this episode of Eat, Sleep, Drive, it's time to get serious about track prep for my Lotus. Today, I'm going to show you how to install track day pads from Powerstop. What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Eat, Sleep, Drive. As you guys already heard in my previous episodes, I am entering in Grid Life Time Attack. So the pads that are on here now are the regular stock pads, and they might be fine. Lotus's, especially Elise's, are known for being pretty easy on pads just because they're so light. But I'm not taking any chances, so I'm upgrading to some track-specific pads. Now, huge shout out to Chris at Powerstop. He sent me these to try out. These are the Powerstop Track Day spec pads, and I actually didn't even know Powerstop made track pads. When I went online, I was looking at all the different brands, and I kind of stumbled across these, didn't even know about them. They're a relatively new offering. They, in my comparison, seem to be a lot cheaper than some of the other standard pads out there. So I'm very curious to try these out. So I'm going to be putting them on my car, and certainly watch this video, see what it's like on a Lotus. Now, maybe this isn't apples to apples comparison to your car, but I have another video on how to do regular brakes on a standard car. But definitely stay tuned to the next video because I'm gonna be doing a review of these pads specifically on the track. Because sure, like a lot of people know how to install brakes, but they wanna know if these are any good and should you buy them. So definitely stay tuned for that one, but we're gonna dive in right now. I'm gonna show you guys what you guys need to perform this install, and then we're gonna go ahead and get it done. So let's dive in. All right, now there are very little tools needed for this job, fortunately. Now, the way Lotus designed the brakes in the front, you can basically do the front pads without any tools at all. But it does help to have some pliers around, and I'll show you guys that in a bit. The back does require removing one bolt, and that is a 17 millimeter. So this is a 17 millimeter socket and a ratchet. It always certainly helps on these kind of things to have a screwdriver around to pry things. You will also need a punch on the back to get a pin out, to get the brakes out. And certainly you'll need your pads. Now these are the rear ones. They look a little funny, and these are the front ones. What's kind of crazy to me is how small these are. If you guys have seen other brake pads, I mean, these are relatively small, but the car also weighs less than 2,000 pounds. So they're, I'll say, proportionate to the car, I guess. But that's really all you're going to need, so let's dive into the actual process. Now, I've obviously raised the car up and put it on jack stands, so you're clearly going to have to do that first and then remove the wheels. Okay, so now that the wheel's off, we can actually get to the brakes themselves. Now you can see Lotus's design here, and this is, I shouldn't say Lotus's design, I mean, a lot of brake pads, especially for performance cars, are designed this way so they're super easy to get on and off. But basically what you have here are two pins which we need to remove, this spring, and then these pads just slide in and out like cartridges, so super easy. Now on the other side there are clips, you can see, holding these pins in, preventing them from falling out. So all we have to do is pop these off, remove these pins. With them will come this spring, and then pop out the cartridges. So let's get to it. Okay, so let's remove this clip. And now the easiest way to remove this pin is going to be to press this spring right here, and then push on this guy. And you can use some pliers to pull on them. But definitely depress this down, and it'll make this coming out way easier. Alright, so that's out. Now this spring has loosened up. We can pull that out, and then this other pin. And voila, we have access to the brake pads. This is where a screwdriver of some sort will come in handy because these guys can kind of be scrunched in here. I'm just prying against the caliper itself, and you can see there the pad just pops out. And let's get the second pad out. All right. Now, since these pads have so much life left in them, I'm not even going to need to push the piston back in for the brake. You can see over here that the piston itself pushes on the back of the pad, and that's what makes the car stop because it hits against the rotor. Now, like I said, because these have so much thickness left in them, I'm not even going to need to push those back. But if you did, a trick I usually like to use is to put the pad that I just took out back in, and then sort of use the leverage of the pad and press this way. I got my new pads here. I'm just going to slide them into place. Whoops, that was too far. Come back here. And then here's the other one. I'm going to push them down just so that they're lined up with these holes on the end here, so we could stick these pins through. And we're just obviously going to put this in reverse order. Now the way this spring clip works is I'm going to put this pin in first, the top pin. And I might need to move around these pads a little bit so I can get this one through. There's one side. I can't really see on that side. There we go. Now that one's through. And then now you can kind of hang this. There we go. Hang that guy, and then to put this pin in on the bottom, put it halfway through, press down on the spring, and push this guy home. Boom, there you go. And then I'm just going to put the pins on, and the front is done already. All right, now the back is a little more complicated than the front, but still super, super easy. So what we have to do back here is we're going to have to remove this bolt, which will let the caliper pivot backwards. And then we're also going to have to remove this pin. Now this pin is kind of held in by a spring, but it's sort of a press fit. And if you can see back here, there's a little hole. And what you actually have to do is punch this pin out. And I don't have a proper punch that size. I believe it's like a 1/4 inch or something, but this screwdriver should work fine. And then you just punch that through. Grab this pin and then kind of just pull that out. The spring can come out now too. So that spring is gone. Now let's remove this bolt. So to remove the bolt, as I said earlier, it's a 17mm head. So I have a 17mm socket on a ratchet. And it might take a little bit of a persuasion, but can break that guy loose. And I'm just going to thread him out by hand. Now, this took me a little bit to figure out on the other side. Now, there is, now theoretically this caliper should pivot back, but you'll try and pull it back and absolutely nothing is happening. You actually have to pull this, like where the bolt was attached to. You can see this kind of slides back and forth. So all I'm doing is pulling this, I'm not even sure what to call it. I'm pulling this way, and I'm prying with my screwdriver, and that just pulls a sort of a pin out of this bracket and allows you to rotate the caliper back, theoretically. There we go. She's coming slowly but surely. And you know what? I trolled myself. You know why this is so difficult? Is because the e-brake is engaged. There we go. So now that the e-brake is not engaged, there we go. The pads aren't so tight on the rotor itself. And I can actually rotate this back. All right, and then now we have access to the pads themselves. So what I'm going to do now is just give these old pads a little bit of a tap to get them out. Just tapping them from the inside. There goes a pad shooting away. There's one rear pad. Now this other one should come super easy. All right, now this pad is out, so we're empty. And once again, if you need to push these pistons back in, this one in the back has these holes in it, so you can put your pliers in there, push in, and rotate clockwise, and it will go back, and the piston will go back. All right, now I should have mentioned this earlier. Now, if you're concerned about noise, which I don't know why you would be concerned about noise because these are track pads, but Powerstop is kind enough to supply silicone that you can put on different areas of the brake pad. Now, they have a diagram here, but fundamentally, any areas, metal on metal, that touch, you want to put this silicone. You can see these kind of rub on the inside here. You could put it where the pin, you could put it on the pin where the pin might make contact with the caliper, and then you could also put it on the back face here on this back plate, and that will just prevent it or help prevent it from making a bunch of noise when you brake. But like I said, these are track pads, so that's probably going to happen anyways. But let's just load these up. Let me make sure I put the pad in the proper direction. So there's one pad. I'm going to put my spring back in here, kind of in a rough position. And I might have to do this kind of one by one. Sometimes that happens. So put the pin in, get it past this first spring, get it past the pad. And you might need to press down on these springs because they're applying tension to keep this pin from falling out. Use my pliers to try and negotiate this pin into where it needs to go. There we go. So I just got the pin far enough. Now I think I can probably give her a little tap. There we go. Both front and rear pads complete. Now, braking in or bedding in, as some people say, brake pads is super important, especially on a race car. Now, on the box, Powerstop has the instructions here. Track braking procedure. You're going to want to do that on the track or in a closed environment, obviously. But basically, go out there, give your brakes a good workout by doing consecutive stops, like it says here, from 60 to 10 and 80 to 10. You don't want to stop completely while you're doing this bedding in procedure, like it says, to 10 miles an hour. You don't want to come to a complete halt where the rotor is no longer moving. So just follow this procedure and your brakes will be bedded in. Well, there you go. It is as simple as that on this car. Now, a lot of cars, especially performance cars that come with kind of performance brakes, are similar to this design in the sense of they have the pins, you pull them out, cartridge style, drop the pads in. It makes it way easy to swap pads on the fly. Hell, some people will drive to the track on regular street pads and then swap track pads once they get to the track. Now, that's certainly a good way to go because sometimes track pads need a certain amount of heat in them until they work. Now, stay tuned because I'm going to be giving you my review of these pads specifically. I plan to do a little driving on the street, so I'm going to let you know, can you drive them on the street? Are they completely worthless unless you warm them up? And then how do they perform on the track? Are they, can they stand up to the temperatures that track driving demands? So stay tuned for that episode, which will be coming up next on Eat, Sleep, Drive. I appreciate you guys watching as always, and I'll see you next time.